For 100 years, we told ourselves a comfortable story. We were the heroes. They were the losers of evolution. That story just collapsed. Neanderthals lived on this earth for 400,000 years. They survived ice ages that would kill a modern human in days. They made tools, buried their dead, and wore jewelry. They were not primitive. They were not stupid. And yet, 40,000 years ago, every single one of them was gone. Science spent a century pointing the finger at us, Homo sapiens, the killers, the invaders. But a wave of new research is dismantling that entire narrative. And what it found instead is far more unsettling, because the real reason Neanderthals vanished might have nothing to do with violence and everything to do with something we are quietly losing right now. Here's what we were taught. Homo sapiens arrived in Europe around 45,000 years ago. We were smarter, faster, better at hunting. We outcompeted Neanderthals for food. We killed the ones who got in the way, and within 5,000 years, they were gone. Clean, simple, satisfying. There's just one problem. The archaeological record doesn't support it. When researchers mapped the actual timeline of Neanderthal disappearance, they found that in many regions, Neanderthals were already declining before Homo sapiens even arrived. In some areas, they vanished from the fossil record thousands of years before the first modern human footprint appears nearby. So, if we didn't kill them, what did? First, the numbers problem. Genetic studies published in the last decade have revealed something staggering. Neanderthal populations were never large. At their peak, researchers estimate there were fewer than 100,000 Neanderthals spread across the entire continent of Europe and Western Asia. That is not a thriving civilization. That is a species already walking a razor's edge. Small populations are fragile in ways large ones are not. One bad winter, one disease outbreak, one failed hunting season, and an entire regional group disappears forever. But small population size alone doesn't explain everything, because Neanderthals had survived with small numbers for hundreds of thousands of years. Something changed, something specific. Second, the network problem. In 2024, researchers published a study in the journal Nature Human Behavior, examining not just Neanderthal biology, but Neanderthal social structure. And what they found rewrote the conversation entirely. Homo sapiens, when they spread across the landscape, did something Neanderthals apparently did not. They built large, interconnected social networks, extended communities, trade routes, alliances between groups that had never met face-to-face. When one group of Homo sapiens had a bad year, they could call on another group 200 miles away. They could trade, they could migrate, they could share knowledge about where food was, which plants were medicinal, which routes were safe. Neanderthals, the evidence suggests, lived in small, isolated family bands, tightly bonded within the group, but almost no meaningful connection outside of it. When disaster hit a Neanderthal band, there was no network to fall back on, no one coming to help, no information arriving from distant groups. They were alone, in the most dangerous sense of the word.
Third, the knowledge problem. Here is where it gets truly dark. Researchers studying Neanderthal tool technology noticed something strange. Their tools barely changed for 200,000 years. The same designs, the same techniques, generation after generation. Homo sapiens tools, by contrast, evolved rapidly. New materials, new shapes, innovations spreading across thousands of miles within centuries. Why? Because Homo sapiens had networks to carry new ideas. A better spear tip invented in one valley could reach 10 other valleys within a generation. Neanderthals had no such highway for ideas. When the inventor died, the invention died with them. Knowledge didn't compound, it reset, over and over again, for 200,000 years. A species that cannot pass knowledge forward is not evolving. It is running in place until the ground gives way beneath it. Here is the part no one is talking about. We look at Neanderthals and we see a cautionary tale, about isolation, about small networks, about knowledge that dies with the individual, about communities so inward-facing they couldn't survive contact with a changing world. And then we look at ourselves in 2025. The average American reports having fewer close friends than at any point in recorded modern history. Loneliness has been declared a public health epidemic by the U.S. Surgeon General. Community organizations, churches, clubs, unions, neighborhood groups have been collapsing for 50 years straight. We have more digital connections than any humans who ever lived, and we are, by measurable psychological standards, among the most socially isolated humans in centuries. The Neanderthals didn't lose because they were weak. They lost because their networks were too small to survive a world that kept changing. The question isn't what happened to them. The question is what we are building right now and whether it will hold. Neanderthals were not a failed experiment. They were a warning. 400,000 years of survival, ended not by a predator, not by a catastrophe, but by the quiet, invisible weight of being too alone. Drop one thought in the comments. Do you think humanity is building stronger networks today or weaker ones? Because the answer might matter more than you think.